webinar series. My name is Lisa Merrifield and I'm with University of Illinois Extension. And we are so happy to host this series and anything around this topic because it's so important for the state. We are thrilled to work with Prairie Rivers Network and the Just Transition Fund on helping people be prepared for these kinds of energy transition issues and related issues. And I also want to thank USDA Rural Development and Rural Partners and all of our other partners who help us make this webinar series what it is. This is the third webinar in our series, and we can pop links for the previous two webinars into the chat. So if you've missed those, you're able to go back and get them. And, as I've alluded to, our goal is to help Illinois communities understand and capitalize on the opportunities that are available both at the federal and state level related to energy infrastructure, the energy transition, workforce development, and all of these related issues. So today our host is Amanda Pankow from Prairie Rivers Network. And Amanda, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Lisa. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what you missed on webinars 1 and 2 if you were not able to join. And as Lisa said, we can share recordings for those. So the series as a whole was focused on exploring state and federal opportunities related to the energy transition, and then ending with this webinar on how you could get support on those opportunities and others. So just a bit more about each one. So you can, if you missed them, you could decide if you want to spend the time watching the video. The first webinar focused on clean energy programs for rural communities. So we talked a bit about some of the existing and new things when it comes to state and federal energy incentives, some of which made clean energy more accessible and available to municipalities and nonprofits. We then focused specifically on the New Era program, which is a funding opportunity for rural electric cooperatives. The PACE program is another clean energy program from rural development for municipalities and developers. And then finally, we heard about the REAP grant for rural small businesses and ag producers. So that was webinar number 1, really focused in on clean energy. Webinar number 2, we really looked at a wider range of opportunities with presentations from EDA, Illinois Department of Transportation, the State Energy Office, which is at the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunities. So with kind of that wide range of topics, we really just got a brief overview, but we hope there's opportunity to dig in on some of those. And you're now through that webinar connected with some of the folks that actually work at those agencies who are running these programs. And a lot of them shared contact info and welcome folks to reach out. So again, we'll share those recordings. So you're on the third and final webinar of our series where we're going to share initiatives, programs, and organizations that are helping coal communities navigate the energy transition as a whole and pursue some of these funding opportunities, not just in clean energy, but in, every community has different assets they want to capitalize on. So other opportunities as well. So if you watched those first 2 webinars and there's something there that you need help getting started on or planning for, or maybe you're ready to dive in and take advantage, today's webinar is about where to find support to do that. So looking at today's webinar, we're going to first hear from Jason Keller, who is the Assistant Director of the Illinois Department of Labor. He's with us today, though, because he chairs the Energy Transition Workforce Commission. So this is a commission that was created by Illinois State Energy Law, the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, and he's going to tell us more about the commission, what it's done, and what it's planning to do. We have 2 presenters joining us from the Interagency Working Group on coal and power plant communities. So I'm going to call this the IWG. You might hear people call it the Energy Community IWG also. So Briggs White is the Deputy Director, so he can share more about the IWG broadly. And then Betsy Dirksen-Londrigan, State Director of Rural Development, is going to share information about past and ongoing efforts to lead what we call a rapid response team of the IWG here in Illinois. So some pretty exciting stuff there. I hope you've heard about, but if not, now's the time. We'll then hear from Rachel Young, Director of Grant Making with the Just Transition Fund. JTF has been a long supporter of work in Illinois on energy reinvestment policy. They also provide technical support and funding for coal communities. And then finally, we're going to hear from Grace Blanchard with the National Association of Counties, and she's going to share more about their Building Resilient Economies and Coal Communities initiative. And they call that BREC. So there are a lot of acronyms today. We'll try to spell them out or remind you what they mean. And I know this can be a little overwhelming. It's when there's all this support, but it's even hard to know where to start. We hope, again, by connecting you with the people behind these initiatives, that will be helpful. And because we're talking about initiatives and organizations that support energy communities, I did want to take a moment to talk a little bit more about myself and my work at Prairie Rivers Network. Because we are an organization that builds networks, facilitates partnerships, brings people together on days like today, people often wonder who the heck I work for. I often get confused for working for different agencies. So we are an environmental nonprofit with a mission to protect water, heal land, and inspire change. We've worked for decades across Illinois with community members in coal areas on water pollution issues. Before coming to Prairie Rivers Network, I actually worked as an environmental consultant in Illinois' coal mining industry. So I've set foot at about every active coal mine in the state. And so I've kind of merged my history as an ecologist, as someone who has worked in the coal industry, and someone who's lived in rural downstate Illinois my whole life, kind of brought those together for the work I do today. So I work with leaders, community leaders, other agencies to help navigate this transition that's happening, and address the legacy pollution of the past and look for new opportunities. So I always am a person that communicates better with real examples. So I put a few different just snapshots of things we've done, we continue to do. I'm not going to highlight these individually, but we'll just leave you with saying that, if you do need help finding more information, making connections with things you've heard on any of these webinars, you see something on this screen that captures your eye and you want to know more about, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Jason Keller with the Illinois Energy Transition Workforce Commission. And I will put Jason's bio in the chat so you can get to know him a bit more and let him.
Good afternoon. I want to say thank you to Amanda for the invitation here. It's been a pleasure getting to know her and working with her over the past couple of months, and I can get to kind of how we are integrating together and working on some events here in the near future. As Amanda pointed out, and I'm going to start sharing my screen so you can look at some of the slides. Of course, I'm on the last one, unfortunately. Let me just quickly change that. There we go. As Amanda mentioned, again, Jason Keller, I'm the Assistant Director to Illinois Department of Labor. Why am I here is basically I've been appointed by the director to chair the Energy Transition Workforce Commission, which was set up under Public Act 102-662. Kind of an overview of the Energy Transition Workforce Commission. Again, it's created under the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, which is commonly referred to as CEJA, and I apologize for another acronym, but that is one that you may have heard of very often. The commission is charged with producing an energy transition workforce report regarding the anticipated impact of the energy transition in Illinois and a comprehensive set of recommendations to address changes to the Illinois workforce during the period of 2020 through 2050. The commission consists of 10 members that represent business, labor, environmental justice, and the regional administrators of the workforce programs developed by CEJA, as well as leadership from state executive agencies like DCEO and the Illinois Department of Labor. I'm sorry, the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity is what DCEO stands for, if you're not familiar, which is a good transition. That DCEO is in charge of the commission and oversees and staffs the commission. What they did early on is they entered into an intergovernmental agreement with the University of Illinois Springfield, where I'm based here in Springfield, to assist in developing data models and statistics for reporting purposes. It is through this relationship with the University of Illinois that initial recommendations were released. So the Energy Transition Workforce Report we were charged with coming up with. It was supposed to consist of information on the impact on current workers, including an accounting of all employees who currently work in fossil fuel energy generation, nuclear energy generation, and coal mining in the state. The anticipated schedule of closures of power plants and coal mines across the state, and an estimate of worker impacts due to scheduled closures. In addition, it was required that we show changes in the revenue for units of local government in areas that have led or are facing a closure, environmental impacts in those areas due to closures, and the economic impacts of the energy transition. The commission did file an initial report on December 8th of 2022. However, we did determine that more work and time was needed to complete all of these goals. And so we called the report filed on December 8th, phase 1, and we are working towards a phase 2 report to be filed in December of 2023. And we'll get to what that report will include in a little bit. To outline some of the preliminary findings that we were able to reach conclusions on. Just to go over some of the basic information is that we used a model of statewide electricity demand to make projections of statewide job losses in the fossil fuel generating sector and job gains in the renewable energy sector. And before I go to that second bullet point, I do want to give full credit to at University of Illinois Springfield, Dr. Ken Kriz, who has worked behind the scenes to look at the modeling, interpret it, and analyze it, and provide that information to the commission. So primarily when I speak of the commission came up with these findings, Dr. Kriz did, 95% of the work. We rounded it out and revised some of the findings, but he does deserve full credit for the work that he's done. Further in the preliminary report, we examined demographic and job characteristics of the fossil fuel and renewable energy sectors, and then analyzed statewide emissions impacts from fossil fuel sector closings. The first step in the analysis was to develop estimates of the effects of CEJA plant closure requirements on electric generation. Understanding those effects puts context around the economic and environmental effects. We began by gathering data from the U.S. Energy Information Administration on electric generation and capacity in Illinois. The data is basically suggesting that from the late 1990s to mid 2010s, both electrical generation capacity, which is the available electrical power at a given point in time, usually measured during the summer months, and total generation, which is generation capacity used times the number of hours worked, or hours used, grew steadily. So with some periods of faster than average growth. However, a divergence did take place in the mid 2010s with capacity growth slowing somewhat, but maintaining its level, and generation was falling. The fall in demand could be caused by some certain changes in climate, or changes in the mix of imported versus local generated electricity. We focused on capacity as that is the important variable for planning electrical infrastructure. Sorry, I lost my place there, I apologize. Let me kind of restart over again. We focused on capacity as that is the important variable for planning electrical infrastructure, as electricity cannot be easily stored in large amounts. Therefore, there must be ample capacity in the infrastructure to keep things going. Neither one of these is a desirable outcome. So looking at further preliminary findings. Within the overall statistics on capacity, there has been a fundamental shift in the fuel types powering capacity in Illinois. In 2015, coal-fired plants were the leading source of electrical capacity, accounting for over a third of total capacity. By 2020, numerous coal-fired plants had been shuttered, and coal was now the third leading source of capacity at just under 22%. There were two primary fuel sources that replaced coal-fired capacity. The first was natural gas. Due to it being a cheaper source of fuel for power plants, natural gas power grew from just over 30% to over 35% of capacity. Though this source of fuel for power plants is relatively cleaner than coal, it still generates a significant level of greenhouse or other gases. And the second source that replaced coal power was wind. Wind generating capacity grew from just over 8% of total capacity in 2015 to over 14% in 2020. During this period, wind power capacity grew by an average of more than 10% per year, from 3.8 gigawatts in 2015 to 6.3 gigawatts in 2020. This presents a significant opportunity for a transition to clean energy in the state of Illinois. The report, the requirements in the act for the report also asked us to look at the age distribution by industry. Going to move my little picture out of the way. I apologize for the small font, but I will read these off to you. Renewable industries have a slightly younger workforce overall. 23% of the workers in fossil fuel related industries are younger than 35. Wind, solar, and nuclear are 26.5%, 26.6%, and 23.1% respectively. On the other end of the workforce, 23.3% of fossil fuel industry workers are 55 years or older, while older workers comprise of 19.3% of the wind industry, 20.8% of the solar, and 22.1% of the nuclear industry. As far as a gender distribution, it's not real diverse, unfortunately, in either industry. So 9 in 10 fossil fuel workers are males, 4 in 5 workers in wind, solar, and nuclear power are males. For race and ethnicity, minorities comprise less than 8% of the fossil fuel industry employees. Minorities comprise 18% of the wind industry, 23% for solar, and 13% for nuclear. While those are better, those still don't quite meet the census percentages, so still room for improvement there. I know my time's probably running short. I'm going to try to get to these last couple slides here. Effects on communities. The Energy Community Reinvestment Act requires estimates of community effects for plant closures in 3 areas. One was environmental, one was change in tax revenues, and the third was supply chain effects. We were able to get to 2 of them, with environmental being the one that we could not get to. We needed further modeling. Our report estimates that the closing of 13 coal plants will reduce total statewide emissions of nitrogen oxides by 27%, carbon dioxide emissions by about 20%, and sulfur dioxide emissions by almost 70%. This is a disproportionately strong improvement in our state emissions profile. The emissions are much lower for natural gas plants than for coal, as I mentioned earlier. Still, the state is estimated to save 9.5% of nitrogen oxide and 7.3% of carbon dioxide emissions by closing natural gas powered electricity plants. One thing I do want to hit upon, which I found probably the most interesting, is local tax revenue. The primary area where energy transition will affect local tax revenues will be seen in, obviously, in the property tax. The individual who studied this was Funderburg in 2021. We do have sites for the studies in our report, and I did put the link in the chat for the Energy Transition Workforce Commission, so you can have access to all of our resources there. But the estimated property tax impacts for coal-fired plants that have been closed or were scheduled to be closed goes accordingly like this. The total property tax revenue loss for Illinois local governments will be $55.4 million per year until 2045, consisting of $21.1 million in losses per year from the remaining coal plants and $34.3 million in losses per year from the natural gas plant closures. We then projected revenue in wind and solar, revenue gains rather. The average property tax gain from wind plants is estimated to be significantly higher than fossil fuel plants at $177.6 million per year, with solar gains estimated at $32.1 million per year for a total property tax gain of $209.7 million per year. I will again try to skip ahead a little bit so that just being mindful of time. The limitations of the findings that we produced is that there were some items obviously that were required under the Public Act that we couldn't get to. We had hoped to get information from private sources on the full-time and part-time status of workers, but we're unable to get that. We also were not able to gather enough information on the nature of job losses at plants to develop reliable estimates. As I mentioned earlier, we are awaiting on further data to outline environmental impacts as well. We will report that later this year. And I'm almost to the end. So what is next? We will file our phase 2 report detailing further modeling and environmental impacts of energy transition in December of 2023. We are very excited, and what we have been working with Amanda on is holding regional meetings around the north, central, and south regions of the state later this year. So please mark your calendar if you are in these areas. We will be in Romeoville September 13th at 6 p.m. in Pekin on October 18th at 6 p.m. and in Marion November 9th at 6 p.m. there. And we are alerting local legislators in those areas, although I'm not done yet. So I'm still making my calls, at least into Pekin and Marion. So that is my report for today. This is my contact information if you need it. Not sure if you want to do questions now or save them for the end.
We'll hold them for the end. And I do see that Briggs has a few really good questions. I would remind people, Jason has put the website for the Energy Transition Workforce Commission in the chat here. You'll notice they actually have a meeting on August 2nd. All of their meetings have been, you can join virtually. They have met in person sometimes, but I think this one's maybe virtual for everyone. So August 2nd, and on that link, DCEO link he put in the chat, you can find links to the report he's talking about and the Zoom info for August 2nd meeting. So thanks so much, Jason. Look forward to hearing more from the commission as they get out to communities this fall and have their phase 2 report. So up next, we are going to hear from the Interagency Working Group on Coal and Power Plant Communities. And we have Briggs White, the Deputy Director, speaking first, and then Betsy Dirksen-Londrigan. So Briggs, I'll let you go ahead.
Hey, thanks, Amanda. And it's great to be with you all. Thanks for taking the time out of your day. I'm going to put up a few slides, but would really love to have a conversation. So let's do that. This interagency working group was established in the first week of the Biden administration to really put a focus on the impacts to communities and workers associated with energy transition and to try to help them out, recognizing that, you know, a lot of these communities don't have the capacity necessarily to access federal resources. They're not all the same. And so they need customized, community-driven, bottoms-up development, and that the federal government isn't always the easiest thing to navigate and access. And so, you know, we've tried to do our part to be more coordinated as well as prioritize energy communities to make it a little bit easier to uptake these funds. In our initial report to the president, which we issued back in April of 21, we identified about $38 billion of federal funding that may be helpful to energy communities. Not all of that was explicitly targeting them, but things like broadband, for example, which we've heard over and over again are critical for rural communities that, need to do economic development, rural health, et cetera. That's widely available, but nevertheless is a priority need. Since then, particularly with the passage of the infrastructure bill and the IRA, that number has really ballooned over $600 billion between formula allocations, competitive funding opportunities, and that's not even counting the tax credits. We've now issued a second report. We had a White House event in April and issued a second report as part of that, where you can find out more about what we've been up to and where we're going. Important to this working group is that there's 11 agencies involved, including USDA, and you'll hear from USDA and just immediately following me. They've been great in terms of having an on-the-ground field presence, but really our goal is to try to bring all the agencies together and really meet communities and try to make it that much easier to access these resources. Just quick highlights on the infrastructure bill, and I know that you heard a lot in the previous two webinars, so not spend too much time, but just wanted to flag that in addition to basic infrastructure needs, of which there's an enormous amount of funding available, although I would caveat that a good bit of it goes through the states in terms of formula funding. And so rather than the federal government being the action agent, it's usually the state agencies that are the action agencies on this money. Additionally, particularly DOE received a very large amount of money in the energy sector. Also, DOI received funds for environmental remediation of orphan wells and abandoned mine lands, and EPA received a good bit of money for brownfields assessment and cleanup. A lot of those things can actually be used for economic development to offset the loss of tax base and jobs associated with the decline in the coal industry. And so, yes, has a climate benefit. It's clean energy related, but also, it creates tax base, creates jobs, and is good for sort of incremental economic activity. On the IRA side, again, a lot of funding, but this time much more defined specifically around energy communities, so more in now specifically targeted. DOE's loan office received an authority to invest up to $250 billion in repurposing energy assets. So that's very tailored to energy communities. There is a 10% bonus tax credit for investment tax credits and production tax credits. If you're in an energy community and you want to deploy clean energy, there is tax credits specifically for manufacturing facilities in the clean energy supply chain, with a $4 billion carve out specifically for energy communities, particularly coal closure communities. Over on sort of the worker and community side, a lot of resources there. Nearly all of this is now rolled out, so it's a really exciting time. That wasn't true a couple of months ago, but a number of agencies have now gone ahead and rolled out their funding. And so this is really starting to hit the ground and get going. So it's a pretty exciting time. I just wanted to share a couple of top lines on what's available. And in addition, I wanted to flag that we have what we call a one-stop shop that we're building at EnergyCommunities.gov. The cornerstone of it is a clearinghouse where you can go through all of the funding opportunities. So here it shows that, for example, there's 149 currently either planned or open ones. You can sort there looking, by the agency or by your eligibility type or by the purpose, say economic development, workforce training, whatever it is that you want to do. You can flag which ones have cost share and which ones don't, because we know that cost share can be a real barrier for communities to access that. But we also have informational resources. We put on events. As a matter of fact, earlier this year, we did What's in the IRA for Energy Communities. We just recently did a two-part series on overcoming common infrastructure challenges in energy communities. And then we also did a series on technical assistance earlier this year, because we know that that technical assistance is critical to going from I have a vision to actually having a fundable project. And so we wanted to tee that up a little bit. Just wanted to flag that also on the website, we've got eligibility maps for those tax credits I mentioned, and you can try to find where you're located. If you're in the Illinois coal basin, the good news is that pretty much everywhere is eligible for these things, but you need to take a look at that as well as follow the IRS detailed guidance to confirm that. Just wanted to flag, and this will be a nice turnover to the next speaker, that, you know, in addition to making all this funding available, we know that that's not enough, and we really want to have a presence in the field and be really coordinated with that field presence and try to bring it to workers and communities and work with them hand in hand. And it's not enough just to say that there's a bunch of funding available, but actually listen to them, understand where they want to go, and then help them understand what resources actually align with the ideas they have, and then hand them off actually to somebody that can move that project forward. So we've initiated what we call rapid response teams. We started it off in Wyoming. Late last fall, we had an event in Carbondale where we announced our Illinois Coal Basin Rapid Response Team, which is led by USDA, and you're going to hear a little bit more about that next. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and hand it off at this point, and I'll take down my slides.
Thank you very much, Briggs, and thanks to the work of the IWG and Illinois. I think we are all grateful that we were one of the first regions to receive some support, and that's ongoing. And we're going to hear more about that from Betsy, State Director of Rural Development and head of the Rapid Response Team for the IWG here in Illinois. So take it away.
Thank you, Amanda, and thanks for having us today. And I want to point out what an amazing partner, leader Briggs has been from the beginning, but Amanda has been there from the get-go. And Amanda, we would not be making the progress that we're making in Illinois without you. So thank you for everything that you do. So I'm going to share a screen, just share a little bit about the sort of process that we've taken in Illinois to try to make this, all these huge opportunities and all of this funding to make it digestible for communities. So give me a second here. Okay. So as Briggs mentioned, we have these rapid response teams. And so first of all, the Illinois Basin is comprised of central and southern Illinois, southwest Indiana, and western Kentucky. But obviously we're going to focus on Illinois today. And the approach that we have taken is to bring together the federal agencies that are part of the IWG, but also to bring in so many of our amazing partners, like Amanda from Prairie Rivers, like Rachel from Just Transition Fund, but our state agencies. And so we're really trying to all just get on the same page so that we can bring these opportunities to communities. Because one of the things that, especially with my role in rural development, that we hear from folks so much is just, where do I start? Or I have this great project, what do I do? And so that's kind of what we're trying to fill in there. So what we've done is, and this is an example from what we did in Indiana. Let me move on to back to Illinois. Okay, so in Illinois, the approach that we've taken are these 2-day funding review workshop events. And so let's just take, for example, what day one would look like. And we've had 3 of these. We did one in Havana, we did one in Marion, and one in Effingham. And we work with the local regional economic development planning commissions. And we solicit applications from that certain geographic area. And when I say applications, what I mean is applications to make a presentation in front of all of these assembled agencies about a project that your town has. And some of the projects are pretty straightforward, some are very complex. And so if it's a straightforward project and we receive your application, then what we might do is just immediately connect you to the right person in an agency. And when I say connect you, I don't mean just respond to you and say, oh, well, I think that EPA has a program for this. That's not what I mean. It means personally introducing you to the right person at the agency, making a warm handoff and introduction so that they are then prepared to take you to the next step, whether that is answering your questions, whether it's helping you make sure that you have got the correct program and application, and so on. Now, if your project is more complex, then we do invite you to make a presentation, because we find that that's most valuable for both your project and for the agencies to be able to really dig in and participate with you. And so what that might look like is you being invited to come in, make your presentation. You probably take about 10 or 15 minutes to do your overall talk. And then this is where really I think that the magic happens. And that is that all of these agencies that have all of these different programs can start raising their hands and saying like, hi, I'm Mike, I'm from Rural Development, and I think that we have a business development grant that might help you. So I'm going to be your person with RD. And another person might raise their hand and say, hi, I'm Pat, I'm from Illinois Department of Natural Resources. I think we might have a program that can help you. So I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to work with you on it. And then sometimes those conversations turn into strategy sessions, like, have you thought about this? Or what about this? Or can we take this first piece and then move it into a second piece? And so there's all kinds of things that go on. But at the end of that presentation, what I can promise you is that you will walk out with not just with a list of names, but it's really going to be your next steps, because we will have identified every person in the room, the agency that spoke up and said that they have a program that could be helpful to you, and the name, contact information, phone number, email, everything to the person that you just spoke with. So as you walk out, you have your next steps for following up about your project. And that's what we do on day one. And then on day two, it looks a little bit differently. It looks a little bit more like this, where it is a workshop. And the workshop was really a product of what we heard people want, and it's trying to address the needs of communities that maybe just quite aren't that level of readiness to make a project presentation, but really want to learn more. So the morning starts with a few different panels, and it's a combination of federal and state agencies who are there talking about the programs that they have, the specific funding opportunities, and really trying to target that into especially building in some of the special opportunities for people who are in these energy communities. And then after the panels, we go right into workshop mode. And workshop mode means there is a 90-minute interactive presentation on grants.gov and how to navigate it, because we know that it can be really overwhelming to try to get onto grants.gov and figure out what's going on. So I want to, first of all, encourage you to go to EnergyCommunities.gov. Briggs and his team have created an amazing funding clearinghouse that has opportunities that are really targeted at coal communities. And so start with that one. Still, once you start thinking about what it means to actually try to apply for a grant, it can be a little bit like, oh my gosh, yikes, like, how do I do this? Well, we're trying to take some of those question marks and some of that fear factor away from you. And so you'll bring your laptop, and if you don't have one, then we'll provide one for you. And we'll work with you to help you navigate these websites and kind of figure out what's going on, how to look for it, and then what it means to actually apply for the grant, what happens if you get the grant, what kind of reporting do you have to do, what does that mean, what kind of personal time investment and energy investment are you making, those types of things. So it's a great workshop. And then following that workshop, we're trying to help people take even that very next step, which is to apply for your unique identifying number. So anybody who has gotten to the point of applying for a federal or a state application knows that you have to have a unique identifier. For federal, that's SAMS.gov. For state, it's the GATA portal. And so we'll actually sit with you and walk you through the steps on how to accomplish that. Because what we don't want to have happen is have you go through all these different steps, all of this research, I'll put in all this work, and then get hung up on something like that. And so we're there to be of assistance. We just completed another funding review and workshop at the end of June in Effingham. And so we'll be setting the next date for the next funding workshop and review combo. So keep a lookout for it. And if you have any questions, please don't ever hesitate to reach out. And again, go to energycommunities.gov. It's the best way to stay abreast of all of these opportunities. And I see you back, Amanda, so I will stop sharing and turn it over to the next one.
Thank you so much to Betsy, and Betsy and her team at Rural Development are just amazing folks. And if you get a chance to go to one of those funding review meetings, I would highly recommend it. I had to miss the one in Effingham and was like genuinely disappointed. So looking forward to the next one. So next up, we have Rachel Young with the Just Transition Fund. Again, the Just Transition Fund has been a longtime partner of mine, Prairie Rivers Network in Illinois, both doing like on the ground work and funding work. So I will hand it to Rachel for her presentation.
Thanks, Amanda. Just gonna share my screen here. How's that? Great. Well, first of all, it's just been really wonderful to play a role co-hosting this webinar series with University of Illinois Extension and with Prairie Rivers Network. So, and I just so appreciate the opportunity to also be here to share more about our work with all of you today, with so many of our amazing partners who are also on the agenda today. So yeah, just a real pleasure and honor to follow Briggs and Betsy. So the Just Transition Fund, we are a national organization. We work in coal communities across the country to help them overcome the economic challenges brought about by the decline of the industry. We've been around for about well, going on 10 years. We actually got our start when the Obama administration created the Federal Power Program, which was the first time that federal funds were made available specifically to support coal communities in economic transition. So we have a long track record of helping coal communities across the country now access federal funding. And so that's what I'm here to talk with you about today. And in addition to this, what we call our federal access work, we also do work at the state and the federal level to advocate for strong and robust transition policy and funding programs. And we also convene our partners to help ensure that practitioner leaders across the country are able to connect with each other and share lessons learned. So where we work in rural communities across the country that are, again, impacted by the decline of the coal industry. By our count, 372 counties, more than 10% of the country are home to a coal mine, a coal plant, or both. So it's a huge problem. And we prioritize the communities that are the hardest hit. And we've conducted an analysis to identify the most economically distressed coal communities with the most marginalized populations. And so I've listed here the counties in Illinois that we prioritize based on that analysis. That said, I also want to emphasize that we know that coal impacts in the state extend beyond the counties listed here, and that also impacts don't stop at the county line. And so our programs and services are available to all coal impacted communities. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us, even if you may not see your county listed here. I want to say, before I dive into our Federal Access Center, I want to say a quick word about federal access for what? What is this funding for? In our experience, the most sustainable economic development projects really build from the assets of a place and are created by local leaders. We have found that communities really need the right mix of economic development strategies, workforce programs, and infrastructure investments to build local capacity to catalyze change. And so the projects that we support advance one, economic diversification across a range of sectors. So these include but are not limited to opportunities in the clean energy sector, sustainable agriculture, remote work, outdoor tourism and recreation, manufacturing, and mine land and plant reclamation. We also support workforce development programs in these sectors, as well as broadband infrastructure and affordability initiatives. I won't belabor this slide, but I think everyone on this call knows that just because the funding is available, as we've all been speaking to, doesn't mean that it is easy for communities to access. There are so many programs across so many agencies with so many different requirements, including often matching fund requirements. And so that is why we launched our Federal Access Center so that we could help communities overcome these barriers. And so last year we launched our Federal Access Center, which was really kind of an expansion and a rebranding of work that we've been doing for a long time in response to the huge moment of opportunity at the federal level to access the billions of dollars in funding available for rural economic development that Briggs and others covered. And so we provide two key forms of services that I want to highlight today. One is what we call our application ready support. And these are grants of up to $100,000 to support any of the costs associated with developing a federal application. The most common requests that we see are for matching funds and for grant writers. I've called out those two on the slide, but we also provide support for staff capacity, funding to convene partners and stakeholders, other expert consultant needs. So these grants are really flexible, and they are also, we turn around decisions really quickly. They're very much rapid response, rolling basis style grants, as federal funding deadlines come and go throughout the year. We also provide technical assistance. We have a bunch of experts who have expertise in different agencies and funding programs who can review proposals and provide feedback. So that's application ready support. In addition, we provide what we call early stage support, recognizing that it takes a lot of work to get to a place, as Betsy was just speaking to be able to apply for federal funding. And so this support provides both organizational capacity building as well as project development support to help communities really build their readiness to apply. Our major program this year is our Coal Communities Get Ready Challenge, which we'll announce. We'll be very excited to announce our cohort of awardees this fall. We got a number of really exciting applications from Illinois, so really excited to announce that cohort later this year. And we're also always developing new programming based on the needs we're hearing for the field. So if you are thinking about applying for federal funding, please do reach out to us. I want to provide a quick example of a partnership that we have in Central Illinois with Greater Peoria EDC. We are, through this early stage support that I just referenced, we're providing both funding and technical assistance to support their work to conduct broadband feasibility studies in several counties in their region. The studies are intended to identify a community need for broadband and provide the data that's really needed to be able to build public-private partnerships with local internet service providers to go after federal funds and expand internet service. So we're really excited about that partnership. This slide just is nuts and bolts on how you contact us, what that application process looks like. So to be eligible, we support both 501c3 nonprofit organizations as well as local governments located in coal impacted communities, working on economic development, workforce, or broadband infrastructure projects, and that are planning to apply for federal funds. So those are the very basic eligibility criteria. If you meet those, please reach out to us. We have a very quick 1-minute inquiry form. I'll provide a link in a moment. We'll do a quick eligibility check and may reach out for a call to learn more, may send you our very quick streamlined application if that's the right next step, but we'll kind of route you appropriately. The first step is just to fill out that quick form. So I will share that. Oh, that's on my next slide. This slide, I also have a slide with some of the many programs available to support coal transitioning communities. These are programs with deadlines coming up this year. I won't linger here. I see Amanda popping back on. We have helped communities leverage going on 400 million to date. So we're really proud of our track record and really excited to work closely in Illinois to help grow that number. So with that, I will share, I know we're going to share the slides, so this has the link and the QR code to help you find our materials, find that form that I mentioned. You can also just reach out directly to me. Here's my contact info, and I will leave it there and turn it back over to you, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Encourage folks to not be shy about reaching out to Just Transition Fund. I selfishly want as much support for Illinois as we can get, although I do love our Appalachian and other partners across the state that we work with as well. So I will hand it to our last presenter, Grace, with the National Association of Counties Building Resilient Coal Communities Initiative.
Thanks so much, Amanda. It is a pleasure to be here with you all this Friday afternoon. A shout out to everybody who's spending their Friday afternoon thinking about energy transitions and economic development and all of this good stuff. I just would like to commend all of the local leaders in Illinois. You all are really embracing this as a challenge that you all want to overcome. It's been a pleasure to listen in on several meetings that Betsy's been a part of. And just want to recognize that you all are doing everything in your capacity to take on this challenge and overcome this shock to your economy. My name is Grace Blanchard, and I work at the National Association of Counties on our Building Resilient Economies and Coal Communities initiative. This is a community of practice that was supported by the Economic Development Administration. And really the goal is to empower coal communities to strengthen the future of their economy. So we're talking about economic resilience. We're talking about the ability to overcome and bounce back from economic shocks, to have a diverse and resilient economy. That's at the fundamental of all of our work. Recognizing that this is a challenge that is impacting regions across the country. So highlighting here that this is very relevant to the Illinois basin, and through our programming, we want to connect your region to other regions across the country that are facing similar challenges. So that includes the Rocky Mountain West, that includes lessons from the Appalachian region, and as well as the Four Corners, really sharing those best practices, presenting a network of support. Here is just a quick overview, and I'm running through this because I know we're short on time, but we've got 4 key activities that are part of our program. The first is our BREC National Network, and I'll just say that this is an open door to all local leaders, all coal community stakeholders. It includes a bi-monthly virtual learning series, and then also an online community platform where we share these resources, and there's an ability for you all to engage in dialogue and ask questions. The second is our Commitment Coalition. That is a leadership network of 20 expert leaders at the local level that are doing this work and are looking to learn more to strengthen local capacity and advance projects for economic resilience in their community. The third is our Action Challenge. That is a technical assistance program. And then the fourth is our storytelling campaign. So that's really our attempt to capture some of these best practices, these stories and community case studies, so that you all can learn from each other, that we are not having to recreate the wheel when it comes to things like infrastructure investment, revenue replacement, these challenges that are shared across the board. So like I said, this is in partnership with the Economic Development Administration, but we also are really grateful to have 3 partners on the project, including Community Builders, which is based in Colorado, the West Virginia Community Development Hub, and EntreWorks Consulting. And they are really providing the technical assistance, working directly with communities in a side-by-side approach to identify projects that will help strengthen local economies. So the first one I did just want to dive into a little bit more because this is open. This is no barrier to joining this, and it is some really good content that we're sharing. So the BREC National Network holds bi-monthly virtual meetings. There's 3 things that you can expect to get out of each meeting. First is a toolkit, a framework for economic diversification. So really that lesson overview of how you can do some of this work. The second is a community case study. So really that boots on the ground perspective of how this work is being done at a local level. How can you learn from another locality and adapt that to your community? And then the third is, I think we all mentioned, there's so many resources. So our goal is to always curate a series of 3 resources that are kind of applicable to that topic. So just yesterday, we were diving into the topic of outdoor recreation and how that can be a component of economic diversification in your community. And we shared resources and a case study of that. Here's just an overview of the topics that we are going to cover through the BREC National Network. So you can look forward to those. And here is how you can join it. So first of all, it's really easy. You can just visit our website, naco.org/BREC, and then you can also take a picture of this QR code, and that's how you join and become a part of our online community platform. So really want to welcome you all and encourage you all to participate in that. The second is our coalition, and this is, like I mentioned, it is 20 local leaders. I saw that Carla Vita's on the call. She is a part of our coalition. And these are champions doing the work at the local level. They are real advocates for their community, helping to support their transition from coal industries to other industries. So these folks in this picture are really doing the work and are a great resource to draw from. And I did just want to highlight, there's a local leader, Commissioner Mark Kina with Randolph County, Illinois, is one of the 20 local leaders that were selected for this. And he's identified 3 areas that he is looking to support his community in, and that's community health, alternative energy, and workforce transitions. So he will be using, he's a part of the BREC Coalition, which is a 2-year program for peer learning. To use that time to kind of really build out his knowledge in these topics and share that back with his community, and I'm sure his neighboring communities as well. So just wanted to shout him out as a member of the coalition, as a local champion from Illinois. The third thing, which I think is sort of the most tangible thing that the BREC program offers, is our Action Challenge. So that's a technical assistance program where communities can apply, and they work with a coach from one of our partner organizations for a year to create an individualized economic diversification strategy. So this is really built from the ground up. We have 8 teams that we're working with right now. And then here is sort of the process that they're walking through. So first is kind of looking at the policies and revisiting those plans, identifying those opportunities, where are the gaps. And then fourth is kind of identifying those projects, building those out. And then the fifth is really identifying those resources and how can a community be matched with those and move into implementation in a very strategic and thoughtful way. I did just want to highlight, so applications for cohort 2, like the Just Transition Fund, this is called a challenge, but the Action Challenge cohort 2 applications will be open in September 2023. So this is a kind of perfect time to start thinking about this in your community. The applications are pretty light lift, but you can start to talk to your neighbors. You apply as a team to receive this technical assistance for a year, and it really is a shoulder-to-shoulder approach to allow your stakeholders to come together and be thinking strategically and have a plan that will really diversify your economy so that it is no longer impacted by a decline in one industry. And so that's sort of the overall mindset that we have in those plans. And then just wanted to kind of circle back and say that really, the BREC National Network would love to see you all participate in that. I know that many of the Illinois communities already do. And then I'll share my contact information in the chat as well as just a welcome to be in touch anytime. We really are looking to connect communities across the country and share these best practices. So that's kind of the bread and butter of the BREC program. And really appreciate you all taking the time to be here.
Thank you so much, Grace. And so we don't have a lot of questions in the chat, so maybe that's okay that we don't have much time for Q&A. I know Briggs asked a couple of real thoughtful questions about Jason's presentation on what's driving the tax benefit differences and magnitudes for solar and wind. And another one about construction and operation jobs and renewables. And Jason, I don't know if you have any reflections on those questions. And we'd certainly have, great resources to connect Briggs to if you don't today, but go ahead.
Okay, yep, I think I can answer. So what our report saw is that overall in the fossil fuel sector, Illinois is projected to lose about 4,900 jobs by 2045. 2,500 of those will be in in coal mines. Against those losses, then our report estimates that renewable job gains on the lower side would be about 7,200 gains. If you're looking at a more higher estimate, it would be about 21,000 for renewable jobs. So therefore, we project, somewhere between 2,300 and 16,000 jobs over the next 23 years from the transition to electric generation with clean energy. That obviously, some of those job losses are going to impact the property tax revenue coming in. And obviously, if a large business shuts down, that impacts it as well. That won't be seen across the state. It's going to be somewhat, regional, and some areas are going to be disproportionately worse than others. 3 counties take the brunt of it, which will be Washington, Will, and Williamson, where they're projected to have 400 or more job losses, while an additional 4 counties, Franklin, Lawrence, Perry, and Randolph, are estimated to lose about 300 to 400 jobs. Again, most of those losses are going to be in the central and southern region of the state, with the exception of Will County in the north. I think Briggs asked about the construction jobs. We do see an impact. Problem with windmills, obviously, is that once they're up, they're up. It doesn't take a ton of maintenance as compared to coal or nuclear, where the constant maintenance is needed in construction work. So that was foreseeable, and the labor unions in the state were mindful of that and have continued to push for additional jobs, job security, if you will, in these industries. Hopefully that answers your question. Happy to take any.
Yeah, maybe we can take it offline, but I appreciate those comments. Thanks, Jason.
Yep, thank you.
Any other, I know we're a bit over 2, so some of our presenters have let me know they need to jump, so please feel free to jump. I will stay on a few more minutes if folks have questions, and we can always get question answered in the follow-up materials. So one of the big questions I think we heard a couple times was, will the slides be shared? And the answer is yes. And the recording will also be shared. So you'll get an email from Nancy at Extension sharing the recording and the slides. I also do plan to package up all 3 webinars with a bit of a primer on each, and I will send that out with registrants in a few days, also probably beginning middle of next week. So you'll have all those 3 presentations at your fingertips. And again, in the, listen to those first 2, look at the opportunities that you think might be something that's meant for your community, and then let's get you connected with some of the people on today that can help you go after those, whether it's just initial planning or actually putting in applications. So encourage folks to reach out. And I'll stick around for a moment here and see if there are any final questions in the chat. And folks, presenters, thank you so much. Thanks to Extension. Lisa, I don't know if you want to say any final words, but thank you, everybody.
Yeah, and my final words are just thank you so much. Thank you, Amanda, for shepherding this process through. Thank you for Rachel for helping us pull this all together, and all of our other partners. And thanks to all of you for joining us today.